Hey, Next Economy Now listeners. Before we begin, we wanted to let you know that our fall cohort of the Next Economy MBA begins on September 29th. If you're an entrepreneur seeking to create a business that works for all life, a member of a team looking to transition your organization into one that is more regenerative and democratic, or someone who's considering a career or livelihood transition in alignment with your values, we designed this course for you. Over this 9-month learning journey, you'll have the chance to learn practical skills around business and life design based on our work with over 500 social enterprises. In addition to live sessions, you can deepen your experience and practice with special sessions, affinity groups, and connections with over 800 alumni who have participated in the course. Interested in learning more? Visit lifteconomy.com/MBA to view our course curriculum and sign up for a free intro with one of our facilitators. If you're ready to sign up, you can use the code PODCASTMBA to save 10% on tuition. We hope you'll join us.
Welcome to Next Economy Now. The goal of this podcast series is to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, equitable, democratic, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy.
Okay, welcome. This is the Next Economy Now podcast. I'm Phoenix Soleil, partner co-owner at Lift Economy. Lift is an impact consulting firm whose mission is to create, model, and share a racially just, regenerative, and locally self-reliant economy that works for the benefit of all life. I'm also a certified nonviolent communication trainer, mediator, and I do organization consulting, mediations, conflict resolution. I care deeply about supporting people to have conversations that make trust, repair, and collective transformation possible. My guest today is Gary Malachi Scott. He is a community healing manager for Restorative Justice for Oakland Youth. He is the co-founder of the North Oakland Restorative Justice Council. Malachi has journalistic experience with written articles in the New York Times, the San Francisco Chronicle, and has been featured on other articles around the issues of incarceration. He came to the Restorative Justice through the Victim Offender Education Group, a program of the Inside Prison Project, while incarcerated at the San Quentin State Prison. During his incarceration, he obtained an associate's degree, co-founded a restorative justice-based group called Kid Cat, Creating Awareness Together, and was the sports editor for the San Quentin News. Malachi, I am so glad to have you on the show, and thanks for taking the time. I would love it if you could tell us a bit about why restorative justice is important to you.
You know, it's one thing to hear about it, and it's one thing to experience it. And it became important through my experience. And when I came into it, I heard that it was very, very intense, but I had no idea how transformational it was going to be to me in my life and in my journey.
Before you go on, I just wanted to check, this is while you were incarcerated?
This is while I was incarcerated. And I joined the group, as you read in my bio, through the Victim Offender Education Group. And it was a group where I took probably the biggest risk in my life in sharing about details about my life that I would often want to hide, not talk about the harms that I caused. And so really exposing myself and to the degree, and I must admit, after the first time I shared about the harm I caused or my life experiences that I felt shame around, I felt like I made a mistake. But I stayed doing it amongst other people who were doing the same thing. And eventually that shame and guilt turned to power. Like healthy power. And so after my first year being involved, I ended up staying with it and was involved for an additional 4 years. You know, so it was that transformational, and I had no idea that was coming. And so because I know it worked for me, I wish this for everybody, no matter if you were incarcerated or not. It's very much transformational.
Thank you for being willing to share what is obviously such a vulnerable experience. And you're talking about how hard it is to admit when you've caused harm. I was wondering if you could give the people listening an example of some of the ways that it shifted your life. Yeah.
I think the biggest reason, if I was to jump straight into it, it really helped me to value or recognize the importance of breath, of human life, of people pursuing their goals and dreams with the people that they love without interference. You know what I'm saying? So that was for me. And I realized that I interfered with people's lives and it don't feel good. And so going through restorative justice helped me realize how deeply I impacted people with my decision making. So now I'm at a point where I realize that we are all connected, and it is very, very important to honor our fellow brothers and sisters in this world and within their life experiences. And I didn't get that when I was younger. I was so selfish. I was so young too. So I do give myself grace. I went in when I was 15. I made those decisions as a young teenager. But that's the biggest lesson. Another lesson that I got from it too is, just like I mentioned earlier, like I was able to eventually have compassion for myself and realize that I also was somebody who was impacted as well by abuse, by learned behaviors, by teachings that I was receiving, or by the neglect and so much so forth that I was experiencing growing up. And so I learned that I can be compassionate no matter what I did, when I was younger, and I can turn that into power and into honor as well. And so even to this day, every year I honor the person who I harmed to go to jail. Maybe we'll get into that later on. We'll see. So I pay my respects. I pay my homage. I honor people. I remember, and I also remember myself too at the same time. And so these are some of the biggest lessons that I learned and throughout my travels too. Like, we really are all connected. One person wasn't created in this world. Like, community is here for a reason. And I need to see myself as a part of it. And if we all see ourselves as a part of it, then the value for each other's well-being shoots through the roof.
Wow. I really appreciate this. And I was thinking maybe you could take, what do you think caused you to be the person you were that created the harm? And what were the processes? Because one of the things I'm excited to share with people, because sometimes when you look at the media, what you see is this focus on punitive and this idea that they can never change, or people are disposable and people think that the way to change people is to lock them up and basically hurt them so bad they'll never do it again. So I'd love to hear, to the extent that you feel comfortable, share like what was there for you, like what some of the environment or the way that your personality was formed, and then how does a program change that? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I get your question. Like, what was the causative factors or, things that kind of led to my thinking at the time. And there was a number of things, and it was gradual. And even when I made the decision, I always had a God conscience. And so I already felt like, I was making poor decisions, and that wasn't right at all. And I suppressed those thinkings, or at least I talked myself into something that I call distorted thinking, or I blamed others, or I justified my behavior, all of these things. But I think, looking back in retrospect, and it starts in the household. I definitely didn't have my father. I learned about my father in recent years, but growing up, he wasn't around at all. I didn't even know what he looked like. So I think because of that, I didn't really respect male authority because I never really had it. And then once, I mentioned abuse earlier, I feel like once I felt like my mom kind of allowed some things to happen in my household and I became like a teenager, I started not to necessarily respect my mom's authority as well. And so I became what people probably call as hard-headed to a degree. I think I was soft-hearted, but I also became selfish at the same time, if that makes sense at all.
I kind of relate to this. I grew up in East Flatbush, and I remember at some point in my teenage years, because, it was a hard environment right now is getting gentrified and everything. But when I grew up, I remember going through this period where I thought, I'm too sensitive. I have to be hard in order to survive. And there was an environment where people would attack each other. There was a lot of feeling that I needed to be scary in order to not be victimized. I wonder if it's anything like that for you.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot of internal conversations going on, right? And so on one hand, I would go out and I see somebody that's houseless and give them some change or give them some money because I see them struggling. And on the other hand, I would actually be involved in robberies and burglaries as a young person. And so both things were going on at the same time. So I told myself stories to justify it wasn't just like I'm just this person who just want to be like the Tasmanian devil and just rip apart my community. And so it was a lot of lying to myself. Like this is very unauthentic and trying to be somebody that it was a combination of being somebody that I really wasn't in my heart and also trying to meet needs in the most unhealthiest ways. Right.
Yeah. Needs that couldn't be met any other way, or at least in your
mind.
In your mind. Yeah.
Growing up, I grew up in South Central. My mom, Section 8 housing, general assistance, that kind of a family, like so many others. And, I desired more than what I had. I didn't appreciate what I had. At that time, I couldn't see poverty. I thought in my lens, that was poverty. As I got older and traveled more, I saw like a deeper level of poverty, but I didn't know. So what I was experiencing, like I didn't necessarily appreciate even the things that I did have. I didn't like going to the swap meet. I didn't like walking around with holes in my shoes. I didn't like hand-me-down clothes, but I always had something, and I always had something to eat for the most part, even if it was unhealthy or just canned goods, because it was not much, but it was something, right? And so I always wanted more. And before, like, maybe we get into it in the future on this call, like before I even joined the gangs, I was already like involved in stealing things. So I definitely wanted more for myself, and that was a part of it.
Yeah. And it's like one of the things I teach is nonviolent communication. We talk about we all have human needs and for care. And so, but then, the strategies that we do to meet that sounded like there was a need for belonging, for self-respect. And we get these ideas, and especially when we're young, we don't know the world and we're still trying to figure it out. Yeah.
And you're right. I always wonder, like, I remember growing up, I always wondered like who my father was. My older brother, he's 14 months older than me, and we have different fathers. And he knew his father. His father used to come pick him up and take him over to his mother's house and stuff. So he had some sort of connection with his father, even though that wasn't necessarily the healthiest for him. But I didn't have that at all. So I was always curious about where half of my lineage, where do I come from? What is that like? And not having that. And I always wanted to be a part of something. And one of the things I wanted to be was a part of a rap group. That was my biggest thing.
Okay.
Not a solo artist. I wanted to be a part of a group. And or whatever it is. And that wasn't necessarily the thing. It wasn't necessarily accessible. And when I got older, and I used to definitely dress a certain way, but I wasn't no gang member or anything at the time. It was people out in the community who would see me hanging out and invite me over to hang out and stuff. So when I was growing up, I knew I was aware of like gangs growing up in LA. You know about it for sure. But I didn't really want to be a gang member. It wasn't my thing. But it was until I started to get invited over to homes and hanging out. Because I did come off like I was like a cool rapper dude, you know what I'm saying? And so everybody wanted me to come over. And then I started to feel connected, I started to feel wanted or welcomed to the degree where, like, what's up? Let's do this.
Yeah.
So,
Because they showed you love and they showed you care. So you didn't start out wanting to even be a part of it. But when they started to show you this care and this sense of belonging that you weren't getting from anywhere else, it changed your perception of them.
Yeah, it was like, I wanted to be a part of something. I wanted to be a part of like a crew or something like that. But I didn't want to take it to that level because I already knew what that comes with. And, there's kind of dissonance there. Like on the one hand, yes, I felt welcomed. I felt brought in. And on the other hand, I also seen the dangers. I seen the harms that was going on. So both things were true, but it was accessible. It was like immediate. I just go outside. I can get to it. It doesn't cost money.
You mean the sense of belonging and the sense of
The specific group. Yeah, the community, the specific group. And so with all of those causative factors of me not knowing who I was and my identity, not having the things that I wanted and being welcomed in and not knowing what love looked like. You know, I didn't know what healthy love looked like for the most part. My mom was a single parent. She would work all the time and she wasn't a very affectionate person. And we talk about it to this day, but we was very quiet about our emotions in our household. And so I didn't really know what like a healthy love looked like at the same time. And I was 15 and very gullible, and I was still becoming, I was still growing up. Yeah. So I can see how young people can get like brought into that for sure.
That makes sense. Yeah, I relate to this. I have a single mom too. Yeah.
And Phoenix, you mentioned restorative justice is like, I couldn't see it while I was in it. And I was so young. So restorative justice, and when one is really unpacking their life, they're able to step back and take a look at it. And you have other people asking those powerful questions that bring out all of this insight and information. So I can step back and look at it. And that helps in the process. That helps in that growth.
I wonder if it's like this, that sometimes looking at that stuff is scary because I wonder if it's true, like shame and embarrassment and things. So when you're in a situation where you have a circle, a group of people who are doing it with you, who are holding the compassion, then you can look at things that otherwise you just want to bury and not think about.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially too, like when others are being examples of it, it makes it a little bit easier, right? So I see people that's older than me stepping up in their power and being vulnerable. Because that's what happened in my group. Like I was one of the youngest in my group, and the people that were older were being, crying and sweating and sharing about some deep things. So I knew I wasn't alone, but it was still my turn to go and step up and to share, right? And it still wasn't easy, but it definitely made it like I knew I was a part of a group that everybody was getting into it,
Yeah. So again, it's that belonging, but a positive version of it instead of what you had before.
Right. I mean, the shame aspect of it is, especially like in prison or being a former gang member at that time, I wasn't in the gang member anymore, but like, it's still this macho masculinity. Like I'm, not trying to show this soft side, not trying to show this side of me that really wasn't that brave, or at least what I didn't perceive to be as brave. And that can also be like I'm exposing the times where I actually felt scared to other men. And that wasn't easy. Not
easy. And I wonder if there's history of showing that vulnerability could get you hurt or even physically hurt or attacked.
Yeah. Yeah. What if it reached the yard? What if other people hear it and have these ideas? That's what comes up in a lot of people. I'm really thankful though that in my experience, we really build a good container to be able to hold that. But no matter how much of a container, we're still sharing in this way for the first time ever. So there's still shame come up, even when it may be one of those spaces that we really took care of in building. We was very careful in doing that. But, even to this day, like my stuff from my past still lives. I grew a lot though, and it don't hold me back or hold me down in the ways that it used to. But sometimes shame still come up. Especially like when I talk about abuse, it's not the easiest thing or something like that. Even though I was so young, like how can I not be so compassionate, understand about that young person who experienced that, but it felt like I wasn't brave and that I can't share and talk about it. I don't know how much of a choice I had back then, so I should be able to be compassionate and be open about my past experiences without feeling that shame. But, in this society, specifically where I grew up, it was everybody just, you don't talk. I'm not a victim. I'm just all of that stuff. And it's very sad.
Yeah. Yeah. No, growing up in Brooklyn, I relate to a lot of this. My part of Brooklyn, there's different parts of Brooklyn, but yeah, the terms that I grew up with wannabe, you frontin'. And there was so much pain. And sometimes people were looking for a place to release that pain in ugly ways, which is to hurt someone else.
Right.
You know?
Right. We all were fronting. We all were fronting. And that's one thing I seen being in prison too. Even the people who were the most aggressive, like I've seen it in many different ways where I see the people that's most aggressive, especially when I changed my life. I got these people coming up to me, talking to me. I'm like, man, I thought you was the most vicious person on the yard. And you talking to me about your family struggle and the things that you wish you had. And so like, it doesn't even matter what somebody did, how many people they did it to. I've seen it. I've seen their human side and that they're fronting, you know.
I'm fascinated with this because you were saying that part of what made it safe to be in the circle and to share this is that it's private. So how did it show up in the yard? How did it show up that these people that you were saying, yeah, that's a vicious person over there, ended up sharing with you their vulnerability?
Yeah. So, well, some context, San Quentin is what they call a level 2 prison. And so you have the higher security prisons, which is like level 4, level 3, and then to level 2. So about time someone comes to a level 2, especially if they had long sentences, they already made some changes. It may not be like transformational in the sense that, like when I'm talking about restorative justice or not, but they did decide to not get involved in some things that can keep them on a level 4, level 3. So the culture at San Quentin kind of shifted. Because not only do you have people that's not necessarily getting into trouble, but San Quentin being in close proximity to like the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, Richmond, San Rafael, you had more programs. And that was the only place where restorative justice was showing up in the state of California. And so by the time I got there, I was seeing men talk about their worst days of their lives or talking about something that we would deem as emotional or something. Like we don't talk like that as men. So I was witnessing that and it was foreign to me. And I didn't know that men can talk like that. I literally remember thinking like that when I was listening to the discussions from the side, really, that, wow, we can talk like that. So the culture was there before I got there. And now like looking back and witnessing as restorative justice has grown to certain prisons, I think on these level 4 maximum security prisons, like I think it's so many people who will come to these groups and be exactly as we were in San Quentin, even though that environment is more harsh. I really believe that we just didn't have it. It didn't exist. It wasn't cultivated.
So are you saying that you think any of those prisons could have had more of this restorative justice energy culture and then been a place where people could start to look at themselves and shift and change?
It's growing. Restorative justice has grown so much, so fast. It still have a long way to go. But people are seeing like, yeah, this is actually work in maximum security prisons. And, you know, because in the past, they probably thought it would never be. But now it's showing up. And so human beings are human beings, no matter what level of prison they're on, no matter where they work at in society or what city they live in. There's room if we invest in healing practices. We just haven't really invested in it. We haven't gone all in.
Yeah, no, I mean, the research on recidivism with people who do crime again, when there's programs, it's less. People don't leave the life of crime when they can get that kind of energy. And I taught meditation in juvenile hall, and I saw that in the units where we had a strong presence, people started having conversations with themselves, like what you're saying, and they started to face things and they changed. And it's not enough to just be alone. You need the support. You need the modeling. Right. You need the sense that it's going to be safe to go through that because people care about you and are compassionate and can hear that vulnerability.
Right. I think it's important. I like to change with community, the change in community. It makes sense to me. Yeah, it makes sense. It's hard to experience transformation alone in isolation. I think there's a place for like solitude and like, you know, sitting with oneself. I think that's a part of it. But like, we also need to change in community and with community.
Can you give an example of a circle, like how the container is created? I want people who are listening in to be able to get a picture of it.
Definitely. So what I would say, if it's so many things that I know I don't have to explain what restorative justice is, but when we talk about circle is a practice that can get us to a restorative justice. And there's many ways that we can get to a restorative justice, and circle is one of them. So we talk about circle, it's kind of like talking about what you're talking about, like the container that we're in. We're stepping into a container that is carefully constructed to a degree that we all build together and not one person built alone. And so we come up with the way we want to show up with our values and our values. We build collective agreements, and we do a lot of relationship buildings for us to get to know each other, to build acquaintance. And so the more we engage with one another and learn about who we are, learn our ups and downs, as well as recognizing the values through consensus, what we all agree on and how we're going to be in circle, then the container started to take shape and become more magical to a degree to where it can actually hold the light and fun conversations to the heavy conversations as well, and where people can be vulnerable. And so typically those kind of spaces, in my mind, it definitely takes, it's often like 2 hours per circle or more. That's in a perfect world if we have the time to do so. But that's what we mean by circle. Everybody is visible. Everybody is seen. No one is invisible. You have a right to pass, and not share, but you are still seen in passing. So everybody can feel value and important to the space. And so that's just a little bit about circle that I can share. And I know you participated, Phoenix, too. So you may have some other insights.
Yeah, thank you. I want to talk about how is it different from people, because when you would go into, we were invited into some of the homes before you were in prison and incarcerated, and, there was belonging there, and you probably shared, like, what's the difference between people talking in a regular space and people in a circle? And I think for me, it's the things that you don't do. It's that you don't make fun of people. You have that value of compassion and bringing. And so just that intention of nurturing each other's voice, which you might not have, or at least you don't have it as strong in a typical mainstream conversation, just chit-chatting with people. And then there is that intention that people can really be themselves, and that everyone in the circle is going to try to meet them there. Would you agree with that? What do you?
Yeah, I think it's a feeling too. If I was to take it to another level too, I think to me, I'm gonna use an I statement because I don't want to speak for everybody. It's spiritual. And so I am stepping into sacred space. Literally, I'm seeing this circle set up. I'm seeing the centerpiece and these elements that we all need to live: water, fire, and the natural air and the earth, and people building this centerpiece together that shows where we come from, who we are. We may have a picture of a family member. We may have this object that symbolizes something that's a part of our culture. And so it literally, as we walk into the circle, something has already happened visually, right? And it's intentional. And so about time we go into it and sit down, we already set intentions by coming to the circle too as well. And so it's different than just me meeting up with some homeboys and talking. Now I'm slowing down. Now I want to listen. Now the talking piece is in motion, because that's what I didn't mention earlier. Like, we really have this talking piece, which is the person who holds the talking piece is more so, it's a sign for everybody to listen to that person deeply. It is that person for you to listen to, right? That person is seen. So it's so intentional that it's not just a space where some people are talking over each other, not listening, waiting for the thing that they're going to say next. Like, we're coming into it with deep curiosity, and also high support as well, and high accountability too. And so there is a shift that naturally happens, and to me, it's spiritual.
Right. And so, and then because there's an agreement and everyone has agreed to them, if someone goes off and starts to, I don't know, like, first of all, it's harder for them to do that because everything has been so intentional. But then if someone breaks some of the values, then you have a conversation about it, right?
Right. Yeah. Nothing is necessarily perfect. So there's moments where we have to revisit our values. There's moments where I have to look at myself and check myself. There's moments, even as a circle keeper, that I have to check myself, and that I don't necessarily always reflect the values, or I'm not maintaining the stewardship, right? So nothing is perfect. We all have to look inward and continue to evaluate, and also to step up for the greater good of the circle that is happening. But one thing I love about circle is that when conflict arises, like we get to see the power of the circle when like while in a circle, and I've witnessed it too, because I like conflict is a natural part of life. It's going to come up, but to see that we have these practices, these indigenous practices that was left for us to engage in, they take shape when it happens. It's beautiful because some people don't have an outlet or a structure or a way to deal with these things.
Yeah. Some people don't have any way of being able to connect that deeply with their fellow human, and definitely not to restore. But is it true that the victim offender education group, you have the circles, but there's also an arc? Like there's a intention that at some point you're going to start to engage with the people who are the recipient of your harm, the victims of the harm?
Yeah, my introduction was through the Victim Offender Education Group. And that was a group that started in San Quentin, and it's curriculum based. And so, like I said, there's many restorative justice practices, and this is just kind of like one of them that has been developed. And the arc of that is really, the first part of it is understanding that you are a person who experienced some things in your life that wasn't cool at all. You have been harmed. And also, like, you can have compassion on yourself first before we get to the harm that you did. So we start with that self-compassion first, and then move into the impact of our behavior and on the person or people that we harmed deeply, to be able to understand the gravity and the importance, or to be able to have empathy and connection to what we actually did, this accountability piece. And then after that, we go into this thing we call, it's kind of like a surrogate panel. So it's not that it's necessarily direct people that we harmed, but it's people who have been harmed in similar ways that we harmed others. So we had somebody come in who lost their son to homicide, who was robbed, and whatever, like who experienced many different things, that we sit and circle with them. And these people have been prepped for weeks to months, coming up to that point. And throughout our curriculum, we're being prepped to get to that point as well. The curriculum takes about a year or two. So by the time we get to that, we already a year or so into it. And they already been prepped on the outside for so long. And it ended up being this like really, really deep human space where everybody is connected, where you have, like in the restorative justice world, people who came to restorative justice as someone who was harmed, and people who have, been incarcerated, and we all know each other. We all go to dinner together. We all in the community. And so that's it's probably more to it than what I just explained. Because like I said, it takes a year, but that's what that is. And what you're talking about is the victim offender dialogue, which some people have or have had through the Inside Prison Project, through other organizations who hold those ahimsa, who hold those type of circles there. And if it's possible, in today's world, if it's possible, if someone who has been harmed and that person who harmed them is in prison, if they're interested in a victim offender dialogue, they could reach out to these organizations. If you have a family member that was harmed, and you want to meet with the person who committed the harm, you can reach out to these organizations. And if people are willing, in today's world, it can happen. Years ago, it was a difficult challenge.
Could you give names of some of them? Ahimsa?
Yeah.
Inside Prison Project.
Right.
I know those are Bay Area based. Is there anything that's national for people?
No, I don't know all of them, but I would say go online and look up what's happening in your state, seeing what's being offered in your state. And one of the problems that I've witnessed was that people were unaware that this was a possibility. When people go to court, and they come out of court, they don't get told about restorative justice or a victim offender dialogue. They are very unaware of it, that it exists. And so typically people who were doing the victim offender dialogues, they would just stumble into it. They would either meet somebody or they would stumble online and catch it and then reach out. But it's not very popular.
Yeah. Well, one of the other podcast interviews I've done is with Tatiana Chatterjee, and she talks about her experience being a surrogate. Yeah. So there's being a surrogate. So that's where you're prepared to talk with someone who's done the harm, but not to you, but to some.
Yeah.
It's a similar situation, and you get to share and talk. And it's been very powerful because what people think is that, okay, that person goes into jail, I'm going to feel better. But actually, there's a lot more of a sense of completion and healing and being able to go on with your life when there's this space where you get to talk to someone who's done it. Yeah. And I wonder if you saw that experience when you were involved. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we see it. We see it. There's documentaries and stuff where these things are happening. You can see firsthand. Obviously, when a camera is involved, like it may not appear like 100%. I'm not gonna say not authentic, but it's you can see the richness. Like there's a documentary called Unlikely Friends by Leslie Neal that people can watch and see this in action, and it's something to see. The Redemption Project, you see victim offender dialogues in action, and you can see the benefits of when people get questions answered that they've been thinking about for 20 years. Why did this happen to me? And they can get that question, they can get some sort of closure in that question.
Yes. And another interview I did was with a prosecutor, Gerald Partridge, and he's done and facilitated many of these. And he talks about how it's so deeply healing. People, like, it's one of those weird things that sometimes I talk about this in all levels of conflict. When you can navigate it well, it creates this deep sense of healing and trust. Like, it's so weird because it's something that's horrible that you never would want to have happen to you, definitely. And when you are able to navigate it, it can be life-changing in so many ways. Yeah.
It's powerful. Like, you can get your life back, right, in many different ways. And this is just one of those strategies. Like, you deserve to have joy in your life. You deserve to be able to go outside with joy, with a free conscience, and not have that interrupted, or let this thing that happened 10, 20 years ago, like, still imprison us, right? So it is something powerful about claiming our minds, right, and our bodies and our direction in this life, even though this thing that happened to us was unjustifiable. It was traumatic, and there's something powerful about that. And so for me, just to witness like survivors of violence who choose to go outside again or walk down that same street, to me, that is deep and that is powerful. And I wish that for everybody.
Yeah. So I'm curious how your life changed after this experience. Like, how did this impact? And if you want to share what it was like to go through the surrogate program. Yeah.
Oh, man, shoot, man. I was definitely like nervous for that circle. I knew it was coming up, and I was brave and vulnerable amongst men that were incarcerated with me, amongst each other. But now it's time to shift to actually people who coming in who lost a loved one to homicide. Now I got to share that I actually committed homicide to them, knowing that they lost their son. And so it was intense. I was definitely nervous and sweaty, but I went through with it just like everybody else. And just to see the connectivity between all of us that was in the room and how we held each other, it was eye-opening and magical. So now I share my story all the time. Definitely more so early on when I first came home from prison. So I'm not doing it a whole lot now, but now it's much easier for me to share because I know I have a village. I have an army of healers with me who have experienced all of it. And we're realizing that even though we're using the term victim and offender and all of that stuff, we're not married to those terms. We don't even, like in the restorative justice community, we don't even like those terms. But we're realizing that we all are all of it. We're all of it. And so the people who are incarcerated, if we look at in their life story through a lens, we would see that they have been robbed, that they have been abused, that they have been shot at, all of these things. And so we are all of that. And we have family members who have children who was murdered and children who have committed murder. And so, yes, I lost my son, and my other son has got life in prison. And so in our communities, like we got all of these things happening, and it's going to take all of us to come together to be able to figure out ways that we can heal and grow and build our community.
Yeah. And so now you are in communities bringing this work to people
Yeah. Things shifts over time. And so one thing I can say that is, I've been home from prison since the summer of 2013. So it's been 13 years or so. But keeping count. But like, yes, I've been around for a long time and engaged in restorative practices. So in different scenes. So I've been in the juvenile hall and doing restorative reentry. I've been, you read about the North Oakland Restorative Justice, community restorative justice, where neighbors get into conflict or a shooting occurs and I'm showing up to their doorstep after a shooting or something like that and meeting these families and eventually getting involved with circles with mothers or families as a whole. So forth and so on. Like the list really goes on my involvement. And I'm older now, and so things kind of shifted a little bit to a degree. But I'm often still called. The Department of Violence Prevention send me an email or call me and saying, yo, this shooting occurred. Can you hold this healing circle for this family? Can you connect them to resources? And so, but I was more like present and active in the community more so earlier on. And now, as I get older, I feel like I'm kind of more like where people mostly come to me inside and into our office and space more than in the past. And so I'm still here. I'm still in it. I still have a deep sense of care. And my care has shifted from being just local, or my life experiences now become more global. And so there's the micro, now there's the macro as I get older and realizing the importance of it. Right. And that's we haven't even started that discussion yet.
Yes, I wanted to ask about your experiences with going to, which African country was it?
Are you talking about Rwanda specifically? I know I've been to a few, but Rwanda was when it comes to restorative justice. Oh my gosh.
Yes. I've been hearing stories at Our Joy about how meaningful that trip was. Can you tell them something about that project? Yeah.
Yeah, that's specifically when we went to Rwanda, we wanted to learn about how did they work through the impact of the genocide in 1994, and how did they heal and how did they get to the point where they are now. So we went on that journey to be able to explore that. And, if I just get straight to the core of it, they have this place there called the Reconciliation Village. And they have a term for it, and I forgot the term, but it's, translated like the Reconciliation Village. And we got to listen to some stories for the little time that we were there. And there was this older lady who mentioned that I believe it was 7 of her kids and her husband was killed in that genocide. And she talked about what happened, how that impacted her. When she was standing up, sharing her story, and we were listening. And then after she shared, someone stood up next to her while holding her hand. It was a guy, and he said, I am the one who killed her 7 children and her husband.
Oh, wow.
And we all like, man, our like mouths open, our chin hit the floor, and it was so deep. I don't even know if it was unexpected. We knew like the Reconciliation Village we had, like the Hutus and the Tutsis are living in this village together. We heard about it. I don't know if we were necessarily prepared for that story in the way that it looked. And they were holding hands as they both shared. And that was
his story.
He was a teenager. The Hutus was definitely like, all of them really was in a struggle. But there was fed a lot of information as young people. There was fed a lot of information, who were against them, who were their enemies. And there was like promise to get things that they didn't have. Like if you do this, you'll be able to get these resources and stuff. So just like a lot of young people from like 16 to 24, 25, they were the main ones that was engaged. They weren't the masterminds. They were the ones who were manipulated to commit the harms. And so that was his story. And he shared too, like he was in prison. So everybody that they can find that was involved in it went to prison. Mm-hmm. And while he was in prison, he shared that like after 6 months, he started to notice that there were like nurses coming in to treat their wounds and care for them. And he was like, why are you doing this to me? Like, why are you caring for me? And that's when he started to notice that it's a possible shift. Like wait a minute, they're not coming to get revenge. And so what happened was...
Also, he was being nursed by people of the ethnic group that he attacked, or...
So it's a story. People can look it up about, the genocide in Rwanda and how it came to an end. And one of the main generals who helped to end the genocide, his name was Kagame. He's the current president of Rwanda right now. He was young at the time, this general who came in with like 600 people against the odds and eventually brought it to an end. So he was in prison. He thought that the Tutsis were going to get revenge. He noticed that there were nurses coming inside, and he thought that looked strange for someone who thought was going to be the end of him or something. And so eventually they came and presented a civil curriculum. Like, if you go through this curriculum, if you go through this thing called the Gacaca courts, which the Gacaca was the ancient practice, but then now they connected to courts. And if you tell us where you hit the bodies and what happened, you can actually go home. And he took part of it. Not everybody took part in it. There was a lot of peer pressure not to expose things, but he took part of it and he was able to go home, and he chose to be a part of the reconciliation village.
And cha-cha is an ancient practice?
Yeah, gacaca. It means like justice amongst the grass. It's where the community will meet in the presence under this tree specifically with elders, and they will work things out. And so now in a modern world, because of colonization, this idea of courts were introduced. And so now that exists. So now gacaca courts. And what happened was with that was they looked and realized it was going to take over 300 years to prosecute everybody that was involved in the genocide. They didn't have that kind of time. So what they decided to do was let the young people or the people who were manipulated go through the gacaca courts, while the masterminds went through the traditional courts or the major courts that, and that was ugly for them. But they looked at it and like, these people were manipulated. It was crazy just to see like, yes, you did all of this vast harm, but we understand you were manipulated. You were conditioned. You are young people. And so you go through our practice and you can be restored to various degree. However, the stories I heard from the people who were harmed side, they said, they still live with it. It's not easy, but they said they chose to take part of the healing process for the greater good of the country, because they knew that bloodshed equals more bloodshed. And so they took part in it. And so you have all of these gacaca courts where the elders, the community identified elders who can hold the space. There wasn't necessarily judges or anything. And long as people share what they need to share, and it was going through all throughout Rwanda. It's not happening right now. They definitely moved from that. But, you talk about a place where over 1 million people, it's not necessarily a number, were murdered in 30 days.
Oh, yeah. I remember hearing about this. Yeah.
And they also said, I'm going to leave it at this on this one. Nothing go. They said the movie Hotel Rwanda that a lot of people know about and watched, they said that's BS.
Oh.
So I'll just leave it at that. And we'll talk about that on the side.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll chat about that. I could talk to you for hours, and I have. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to tell people how they could hear more about you. And there's the Antuse, am I saying it right? Antuse Justice League?
Antuse Justice, yeah.
And this is your restorative justice consultancy. Antuse, and it's also going to be on our webpage for the podcast. This is a podcast episode, but for people listening, I'm going to spell it out. ATUNSEJUSTICELEAGUE.org. Antuse Justice League, Justice League spelled as you expected. AntuseJusticeLeague.org. And as part of that, you also have a podcast. And I think it's cool that Atunse is the Yoruba word for restoration. Is there anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, look us up on our website. Subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, Atunse Justice League Podcast. If you go to our website, there will be a link to the podcast. Everything restorative justice, we're talking about it,
Great. And you also work at Our Joy Restorative Justice, and that's RJOYOAKLAND.org, ourjoyoakland.org. And I'm involved with Our Joy. It's a space for youth and for adults. And they have spaces for people who are coming back home after being incarcerated, people who have been, there's circles for almost anything
Exactly.
there. And it's a place being involved there. And also it's a nonprofit. Definitely, if you have the funds, donate. I really want to see more restorative justice in the world. That's why I'm doing a series on restorative justice. Do you want to say anything about Our Joy, Malachi?
Yeah, it's a place for you there. It's community. That's the way we look at it. It's all about family. It feels like family. It feels like community. Every circle we eat, we have a meal. It don't even necessarily look like an office space to a degree. Like, it's for you. So look on our website. We talk about all of our services, from therapy to life coaching to counseling to care management to African American healing circles, to all kinds of circles and ways that you can reach out for your own circle, conflict harm circle, or even a training. Maybe you want to be trained in restorative justice. Go onto the website, look us up.
Yes, I completed the trainings that Our Joy offered, and they're great. Beautiful to be in a space with people and, people coming from schools. It's based in Oakland, California, but there are people who flew out from other places in the country to attend their trainings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everybody from the U.S., they come and visit Our Joy. It's like one of the places to come to learn. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, giving you ways to continue the journey, and there'll be a webpage for this, and check out the other podcasts that we're doing on restorative practices. Oh, I wanted to say this, like, people might be like, oh, restorative justice, the circles are just as important as the conflict harm practices, because you can't restore trust if there wasn't trust there. Like, it's hard. I mean, there's a certain trust that just exists because we're human and we're connected, but building up circles is one of the ways you prevent harm, and one of the ways you make it so that when harm happens, it's easier to navigate.
Facts. Yeah. I mean, I can keep going, but we only have so long.
Yeah, we only have so long. Okay, so it's hard to just say goodbye because I love this space. But thank you so much for taking the time and sharing so vulnerably your experience. I imagine even though you've done a lot of work, it's always a bit of a risk to share. And I feel very blessed with knowing more about your story.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Phoenix.
All right. Thanks for joining us today. If you're looking for more ways to get involved with the Next Economy movement, we have some few invitations for you. It really helps us to reach more listeners and strengthen our community if you could leave us a review. Also, you can check out the Beyond the Bee, which is hosted by Ryan Honeyman and Emmy Allison, for insightful conversations about the B Corp movement. You can also follow us on social media at Lift Economy, and visit lifteconomy.com to sign up for our monthly newsletter. You could also check out my page on mediation at Next Economy and Lift Economy to get on my list for nonviolent communication and communication work. All right. Thank you. And we'll end it here.
Thank you.
Hey, Next Economy Now listeners. If you enjoyed this conversation and are looking to dive even deeper into the B Corp movement, you'll love our new podcast, Beyond the Bee, hosted by Lift Economy's Emmy Allison and me, Ryan Honeyman. Beyond the Bee is your insider's guide to the B Corp movement. You'll learn about the new B Corp standards shaping our community, how the B Corp movement is navigating the various tensions and challenges of growth, and how businesses like Patagonia are putting their commitments to people and planet in practice. Check out our latest episodes and free resources at lifteconomy.com/beyond. You can also subscribe to Beyond the Bee on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for listening.
Hey, Next Economy Now listeners. If you haven't gathered from our podcast already, we're really passionate about helping to build a future that works for all of us. If you share that passion and are looking to deepen your practice, we want to share a few ways to connect and learn directly with the Lift Economy team. You've likely heard of the Next Economy MBA, which we started almost 10 years ago and have trained over 800 alumni through the fundamentals of business design from a regenerative and just perspective. New this year, our Next Economy Fund will embody our values of democratically allocating resources to Next Economy entrepreneurs that are part of our alumni network. We've also launched 2 trainings that came directly out of our MBA community's desire for more in-depth skill building around 2 key topics: organizational leadership and personal life design. Next Economy Leadership is a workshop series designed to help culture leaders at purpose-driven organizations move towards full embodiment of their values. And Next Economy Living is a 6-month training designed to help everyday citizens and consumers take actionable next steps to transform their local communities to align with a future that works for all of us. You can hear about all of these offerings and other ways we're supporting the Next Economy movement at lifteconomy.com/next steps. We deeply appreciate you being a listener of our show, especially in a cultural moment when attention and community are hard to come by. We're amazed by the community of folks we get to learn alongside through these offerings and hope you'll consider joining us.